I have a confession to make. For the next while, I'm going to be talking about the why. And if you just want me to get to the how, here's the timestamp. You can jump to that. This is going to surprise a few people, but I absolutely love homemade boiled linseed oil and paste wax finish. For hand tools and things like that, there are a few things that just feel as good as that. You can actually feel every ridge in the wood, all of the grain, and you just get a more tactile connection. Not to mention, it's incredibly easy, and it's one of those finishes you just can't mess up. You soak the wood with it until it stops taking it up. You wipe off the excess, you let it cure for a little bit, put on the paste wax, polish it off, and you're done. You don't have to worry about overcoating it. It just goes on, and it's done. And it looks amazing. The problem is, it's not protective. It doesn't seal the wood. If you put a coffee cup on there, you're gonna get a stain, and it's gonna go straight into the wood. It is not something that's going to stop scuffs and scratches. It is just soaking into the wood to add some color and kind of protect it a little bit. I know a lot of people out there are going to say, well, you can actually build it up and get some protection. Yes, you can put it on layer after layer, leaving several days in between for it to fully cure, really thin coat after really thin coat, and you can actually build up a protective film. But it takes weeks or months to do right, and ain't nobody got time for that. For years, if I wanted a protective finish on a tabletop or some other piece of furniture, I used Minwax Wipe-On Poly. Yes, it is the cheap stuff. It is rather affordable, it's relatively easy, and you can actually make it with the regular poly, just adding some thinner in there, and it's even cheaper than that. As a matter of fact, I keep these cans and just keep refilling them with regular poly and thinner. I've got a video on how to make that yourself. It's something that takes a good bit longer, but you do get a protective finish. You gotta wait multiple hours in between each coat, and you're gonna have to take many coats. Usually I'm somewhere around 5 to 6 coats, depending upon the surface I'm looking for. The problem with it is you get that built-up film finish look, and I don't get to feel the wood anymore. And I really miss that. On top of that, it is somewhat complicated, especially if you want a really nice clean finish. You're gonna have to do a little bit of light sanding in between each one, and it's just more work. Then a few years ago, companies started coming out with what they call a hard wax finish. Rubio, Osmo, and there's several others. And I was a bit skeptical. It's newfangled, it's kind of technical, and can it really be better than something that's been around for hundreds of years? Shellac and poly and hard wax, do we really need that? But there's some big upsides to it. And being monocoat, one coat goes on quickly, goes on easily, no VOCs, has that finish I'm looking, but a protective coating on it. I had to try it. I mean, everything's worth trying at least once. In all honesty, I was really blown away. It has all of the look and the ease and the simplicity of boiled linseed oil, but has the protection and quality of Wipe-On Poly, but it looks like boiled linseed oil. I mean, the color in it is just almost identical, and zero VOCs. Can a hand tool guy really use a newfangled hard wax finish? Fast forward to today, about a half a decade later, and this is now my go-to for any furniture. It just has all the upsides with only one downside. And the downside is, comparatively, it's rather expensive. Being in a basement shop that's only 10 feet wide, using a lot of finishes that have thinners in it is kind of a no-go. I usually have to block out a time in the garage and then heat the garage, and then all the cars have to be outside, and then I have to worry about the exhaust from it, and it's a pain to do that. Whereas with Rubio Monocoat, there are no VOCs, so I can do it in my basement shop. But by far, one of the best things about Rubio Monocoat is the smell. It's really, really good. I know that doesn't mean much to most people, but when you're used to the thinners and the really astringent smells and just reeking, it's nice to have something that makes it very pleasant to work with. For mixing it, I could just dump it out, but I generally prefer to use these little scoops you get with other things, and it's a 3-to-1 mixture. So 3 of these, 1 of that. And now the accelerator. You can do it without the accelerator, but it takes weeks as opposed to a day. Then of course, we mixy, mixy, mixy. Make sure it's all homogeneous and really nice. Now when it comes to surface prep, it says you should sand it down to about 150 grit. And if you are just sanding, usually that's what I'm going to do. However, I like to plane the wood and then just touch it up with sandpaper. Mostly because when you plane the wood, you actually end up leaving all of the pores wide open, and that's what this really wants. But I do like to have a little bit of dust down in there to actually wick it down in a little deeper, much like I do with boiled linseed oil. And so usually I'm going to plane it and then sand it with something like 300 grit. And not much, just a couple passes to put a little bit of dust in the system, clean the dust off, and then we can apply our finish. For application, you want to put it on enough so it's going to cover all the wood. I'm just going to grab a simple shop towel and soak it on. And I want this to be fully soaked. I don't want any dry spots at all. I want this to soak up as much as it wants to soak up. If I have really large surfaces, I'll use a squeegee to move it around, but for something small like this, just a rag is all I use. I love the way this brings out the Rayflex. I mean, it really looks just like boiled linseed oil in person. On the end grain, sometimes it takes a little bit more because it keeps soaking it up, so flood it until it stops soaking it up. Then once I've hit all of the sides, I'm just going to flip it over, wet surface down and all, and do the other side. And now that I've flooded all surfaces and it's really nice and well coated, I'm going to let it sit and let the wood soak up as much of it as it wants. Make sure that there's no dry spots anywhere. And I'll set it up on something just for about 15 minutes or so. Then after about 15 minutes, we grab a new rag and we wipe off anything that's still sitting on the surface. Then once we've gotten everything off, I'm going to take the rag, kind of wad it up into a bit of a ball, and just polish the surface. Doesn't take much, just a bit of a wipe down on every surface. And that's all it takes. And I love how the Rayflex comes out on this. It's just really, really beautiful. Incredibly durable finish. In 24 hours, it's ready to go. I have no problem handling this within an hour or so afterwards. And yeah, I love the way it feels. You still get to see and feel the wood grain underneath. It's not a film finish coat that's thick and heavy. It just looks beautiful. But if it's not a film finish, how durable is it actually? Here's my dining room table. We finished this about 4 years ago, and we have 3 kids that we had in 3 years, so this table sees a lot of abuse. We do art projects and painting and building and puzzles and games, and we're using this table every single day. It gets spills, it gets coffee, and it still looks absolutely amazing. Now, yes, there are a few scratches and dings, as will happen when you have kids in the house, but one of the other really nice things about it is it's incredibly easy to fix. The problem with a film finish is if you build up a finish on there and you need to actually get down to the wood and fix it, you're never going to get an even transition across that finish when you put new finish on that spot you cleaned up. You really need to finish the whole thing in order to fix one spot. But with Rubio Monocoat, you can come in and scrape a spot and then apply finish over it. It's not going to bond into the finish on either side. It's only going to bond where there is raw wood or sanding on it. And it makes a perfect, beautiful, clean transition. You'd never know it was there. Incredibly easy to repair. And when it comes to cleaning, this is my coffee station. So usually this area here is filled with the coffee pot and all of our drinks. And you can see there are lots of marks and stains and other issues that have dripped on this over the last few weeks. I haven't cleaned this at all. So I want to show you how easy it is to clean up. So here you can see some stains from coffee and other things that come in here. I'm just going to come in with a wet sponge and soak them down. And these ones particularly are in a little deeper. So I'm just going to use the scrubber side. Get in there a little bit more. And like that. Those are gone. Clean them up. And away we go. It really is just that easy to clean the surface off. And it's amazing how durable it is. And it's ready to go for the future. There has been one stain that I have not been able to get out of it, and that was actually when we had a bag of potatoes sitting on the counter. And yeah, the bag of potatoes rotted over the course of a week, and we didn't notice it. And it soaked down into the wood. In that case, yeah, there's nothing I can do. I would have to actually grind out about 1/4 inch of wood in order to get through all of that staining. And I don't know of a finish out there that would have actually protected that other than a coat of epoxy. I use a lot of different finishes, but most of the time it boils down to 2. Homemade boiled linseed oil and Rubio Monocoat. If I need a protective surface, furniture or something like that, Rubio Monocoat's what I'm going to use. If I'm using it in my hands, it's a hand tool, it's a saw handle. If it's something I'm going to be feeling, then I use my homemade boiled linseed oil and paste wax. It's pretty much that simple for most things. Now, sometimes I do want other finishes for something specific. I want a finish polish, I'm going to be using shellac. Sometimes I want a poly because I'm matching something else. Sometimes I want that built-up finish, and then it's usually going to be a wipe-on poly. There are different finishes for different uses, but most of the time, probably around 95% of the projects I do, those are the two that I use. When I need it to be protective, and when I want it to feel amazing in the hand. And honestly, they both go on about the same. Let them soak into the wood, fill up as much as they want, wipe off the excess, then polish it in, and you're done. I love simplicity. For color matching, I find the Pure to be almost identical to my homemade boiled linseed oil, and I love the color match between these two. But if you're the type of person where you want to use some stain, you can put that on first and then put this on over top. Or they even make it pre-colored so you can do it all in one, and so you can find the stain you want in the finish, and it's just one coat and done, just like this, except for it adds color, like walnut. If you'd like another look at it, I'll leave a link to the Wood Whisperer. He has a video on Rubio Monocoat, and he actually goes in and shows a spot where he sanded down on the floor. There's part of me that says, you know, newfangled, ooh, is it really worth it? But in all honesty, yeah, it's dirt simple, it's incredibly fast, it's incredibly protective, it smells great, there are no VOCs, I can do it in my basement, it's like the best possible finish I could ever want. The only thing is that it costs a little bit more, but you can spread it out, and it is actually rather amazing how far a 1.3 liter set will take you. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. What finish do you find yourself using a lot? Have you ever used Rubio Monocoat or some of the other hard wax finishes? I'd love to hear that. I do learn a lot from the comments, so thank you for that. If you have something you think I missed, let me know that down below. That really means a lot, and I try to answer as many of the questions that come in there as I can. So thank you for that. That does actually help out the channel. Anytime you hit like, share, subscribe, comment, even if you just click that share button and copy the link and don't actually post it, it does help out the channel. Thank you for that. The algorithm is an amazing thing, but it takes you actually doing things to help out with it. On top of that, there are a bunch of amazing people over here. They are the phenomenal, wonderful, and beautiful people over on Patreon. Without patrons on Patreon or members who've clicked the little join button, we wouldn't exist. We are completely sponsored by the viewers. Thank you for that. We want to keep it that way so I can say what I want rather than what some company wants me to say. I hope you like that. And if you do want to find out more, well, you know what to do. Doobly-doo, click the button. Thanks a lot. I think they'll do it for now. And until next time, have a wonderful day. I do actually find it kind of interesting how I like some of the oldest finish ever created as well as some of the newest and most fangled finish ever created. But surprisingly, neither of them are from Finland.